Welcome back to Lesson 6, where we are going to proceed now with our 2 chapters in the Blended Practices book. This chapter is Chapter 5. We're going to talk about universal instructional practices. And remember, let's see if I can move back there. Those are those basic instructional practices, high-quality instruction for all students, and that's at the bottom of that framework, that pyramid framework. So to start out with this chapter, your authors have provided you with a really great story about Miss Wu and her inclusive pre-kindergarten classroom. So you're going to respond to the questions that I have. It's actually activity number 3, and that is on slide 9. And you have several questions about her classroom. So I want you to kind of map out what's going on in your room. Who are the students? What is everybody doing? Students and adults. She is blessed with a handful of awesome adult supports. And then thinking about engagement, both the adults and the students in the room. Okay? And then you're going to figure out UDL and define UDL. What does this mean? And give some examples. And that is your task number 4 on your assignment list there. So thinking a little bit about universal design for learning in the learning environment, the social environment, and delivering instruction, and then the learning experiences themselves. So let's talk about each one of those as we wrap up our lesson number 6. When we think about the learning environment, we've got to recognize that our schedule, at the age group we're working with, our schedule is very important and really does guide their learning opportunities throughout the day. So as your authors remind you, you want to be very aware of the balance of the activities that you have between teacher-directed, child choice, between quieter activities and busier activities. How long are these activities? Can you be consistent in your schedule? And when you can't be sure that you let the children know ahead of time and explain why the schedule is different. This is going to help a lot of kids be more comfortable with their schedule and what they think is appropriate. And there's a good story in your book about Miss Janie's classroom, letting students know about when the schedule has to be changed. Also, we know that we are going to transition between routines. We know that. But we really want to minimize those transitions. And when we do have those transitions, plan for activities that keep children engaged during the transition so that it's a smooth move from one activity to the next. Several examples in your text. And then we always teach the schedule that we've developed, and we teach the expectations. In other words, what it is that we expect our students to be doing during the different activities during the day. And again, refer back to all of those examples that I posted in our ReggieNet site of a variety of my friends' current classroom schedules. And think about teaching them. We cannot assume that once we put something on the wall, the kids are going to know what it is. We teach and we reteach, because remember the age group we're working with and the ability for some children to retain information, and some children haven't developed that skill as well yet. Also in the learning environment, you want to talk about your learning centers and the materials that you have available. We integrate our skills across all of our learning activities. We don't tell our students, okay, now put everything away, we are going to talk about numeracy or math. No, we embed and we spread math throughout the whole day. We spread numeracy throughout all of our activities. During snack time, we might count the plates as we hand them out. During a large group in the morning, we might count how many kids are here that have on tennis shoes and how many kids are here that have on sandals. Or who has on blue? How many people is that? So this is about integrating our skills. Our interests and our abilities of our students drive our decisions about our activities. When a child of this age, remember what age we're working with, is engaged and interested and motivated to learn, they are going to get so much more out of the activities. So let's say you find out that a group of students or even an individual student is very interested in tractors right now. Okay, fine. There are a lot of ways we could integrate tractors into our learning activities. Also keeping in mind the abilities, skill abilities are quite varied within our groups. So you want to be sure you have activities that are open for a variety of abilities of kids. Your centers that you set up are actually your second teacher in your classroom. Having engaging activities and engaging physical environment is going to drive your curriculum. Teach the centers what happens in the centers, what are the materials, what are your expectations, and also be sure to teach the kids what we do when it's time, when they want to change a center, or when it's time for center time or work time to be over. How do we pick up? Where do we put things? And of course, hopefully you've designed that center in such a way that it's very clear where all of the materials go, because kids can be very supportive in keeping your room organized if you have designed it to be easy to understand. We also want to talk about setting up your social environment and teaching. As you can see with this picture here, which I've always loved this. I was visiting this classroom one day and a little girl wasn't feeling very well, and the teacher said, well, why don't you lay down on the couch for a while? And she did, and the next thing I know, I looked over there and another student had gotten a book and a bear and went over to comfort her. That's a really awesome classroom example of setting up a social environment. So these 6 things are what you want to pay attention to regarding that social environment that can be very supportive to friendships and healthy emotions in your classroom. Let's look at that table 5.1 on page 107. The bottom half of the page. So guidelines for planning and implementing large group activities. This will help you in thinking about group composition, what kinds of activities would be appropriate, how do you implement them. Large group is sometimes challenging for us, knowing how to engage such a diverse group of kids in one activity that we're all paying attention to, whether it's a story or a puppet time or gross motor, or a learning activity or a game. This list and this section in your book hopefully will help give you some ideas. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about designing and organizing the content of your learning experiences. So there are several ideas in your text here. One of them is using conceptual organizers, curriculum webs, being sure that no matter what approach you use, that you're designing authentic learning activities. So look at page 117 because we're going to embed activity here. On 117, you will see, hang on, my pages are flipped the wrong way. There we go. Actually, time out. Great. On 117, you will see 2 paragraphs. One of them is an appropriate example of an authentic learning activity, and one of them is a contrast. It's not authentic at all. What I want you to do here is think about these examples and what is written here in your chapter, and I want you to come up with 2 examples on your own. The first example would be something you come up with that would be an appropriate authentic learning activity, and then if we would also do a non-example or a contrast. You don't have to have a certain number of sentences, just so you can explain to me and I can get the idea that you understand what you're talking about when referring to authentic learning activities. And then we also want to think about our universal instruction in action. There are some additional pages in your book that help you think about intentional instructional sequence planning, and I will refer you to those for you to expand your knowledge about this type of teaching approach. That's all we're going to talk about for Lesson 6, and I look forward to reading your submittals for your assignments. Be sure as you're working on your assignments, if you aren't done, to save the draft, but be sure to submit it before the time runs out at the end of the week. All right, have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.